Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Leverage Your Podcast show. And I'm talking about my favorite topic, which is guesting, which you all know. And I have the lovely Jackie Lapin with me, and she is the former owner of Speaker Tunity. And of course, you've been in the PR business forever, and you help podcast guests share their brilliance on podcasts and have the Conscious Media Relations radio podcast tours. So, welcome to the show. Long overdue.
Well, Lindsay, thank you for inviting me. I'm just so delighted to, whenever I can help people deliver their messages that are so important so that other people can grow and heal and prosper. And
Yeah.
it's, a real mission.
Yeah. I love it. Perfect. Now, what I find interesting is that the term radio podcast tours. Now, I remember when I first started podcasting, there was like Blog Talk Radio. There were so many different like radio shows where people were filming their podcast and broadcasting it. Do they still exist, like the radio shows, if you will?
But let's make a distinction. There's really three different entities. One
Perfect.
is broadcast radio, which you
Mm,
still hear on the various different networks and on local shows, so radio stations, and PBS stations all across the country. And those shows still exist.
yeah.
The difference between them today and before is if you got on a morning show, you probably got maybe 5 to 10 minutes at that. And then there were some half hour and hour long shows. But today, a lot of radio is actually gone to hour long shows, and they also record them as podcasts.
Yeah.
So there aren't as many. I remember a day when I used to be able to download 10,000 radio shows. There's now about 2,700 of them in the US.
Oh,
Yeah, there's really not that many. If that's discounting the PBS, the smaller public broadcasting. But they're still a potent tool. They're still a way to get your message out.
mhm.
We do not ignore them. And when I started this business, the way I got into this in the first place was I wanted to promote one of my books. I had two books. One was the best spiritual book of the year at the International New Age Trade Show. And I wanted to go out and spread the word. And I was a publicist for 25 years before that.
Mm.
I had one of the largest sports special events PR agencies in America. And so when I did it, I realized that there was this growing list of internet radio shows. And that's the second category. And while general publicists really only tapped radio, I hired a bunch of people to go and mine the growing internet radio boom. And I ended up with a list of 750 shows. Now, that was a tremendous number, and it helped launch my books in a big way. When I got done with that, it occurred to me that other people could use this as well. And why didn't I just turn around and offer that
Yeah.
to the people? It became apparent that I didn't want to do sports PR anymore. The industry was changing. The big agencies were chomping on us independents. And so I wanted to serve the people that were making the world a better place. So that's when we started doing what then was radio
Yeah.
tours. And we included both of those. And then, of course, podcasts come along. That's category number three. And so yes, internet radio is still out there and thriving. It's just a different form of delivery system, essentially.
Okay.
When you go to a podcast, usually it's on a pod chaser. I mean a pod catcher, excuse me, a pod catcher,
Yep.
which is Apple or iTunes
Right.
or iHeartRadio or Spotify. Those are the podcatchers where you assemble them. Whereas internet radio, you're on Blog Talk and Voice America and in independent networks like healthylife.net, a BBS, which is all mind, body, spirit. There's a couple of business ones where they aggregate specific subject matters.
Right.
So there's lots of them out there, but podcasts has taken over all of that. There are now over 3 million podcasts in the world.
I know, it's crazy.
And it gives you a great opportunity because almost all an hour, or, it's 30 minutes to an hour. And they actually encourage you to promote. Whereas it was hard to get the promotion in on internet, on broadcast radio years ago.
Yeah.
Got better with internet radio, and podcasters just welcomed you to promote whatever you got. So,
Yes, true.
it's really evolved. And of course, we evolved with it, and we became the Radio Podcast Tour. Um, and, we have in our database just alone 9,000 radio shows and podcasts, and about 7,000 of those serve, mind, body, spirit, personal growth, health and wellness, women's empowerment, how to improve your life in the one way, shape, or form, spirituality. So, and then we have specialty lists, business and women's business and relationships and grief and whatever the subject matter
Yeah,
is, we also pull a list for that. So the good news is that if you're guesting on podcasts today, you have an infinite number of possibilities. And
that is true.
especially if you cross over more than one category. You might be in spirituality, but you're also in um, women's business, or, something, because you can really cross into different areas, either with the same pitch letter, tweaked differently, or entirely different pitch letter.
Yeah. Thank you for making that distinction. That makes total sense. So the internet radio shows, like can you do both? Can you do podcast and the internet radio or
Of course,
okay.
you should not overlook any of the three categories.
Yeah,
Broadcast radio is still viable. It doesn't have as targeted an audience.
right.
Internet radio is still thriving. And some of those networks, Law of Attraction Network, for example, they have big, big numbers.
Yeah.
And then you go on to podcasting, and they're going to be a full range of size of shows. But if it only takes, if you're selling a product or a resource, it only takes one client to hear it. It could be a big show, it could be a little show, and you could be making
Yeah.
the money that you're looking for just on one client. So
That is
a
so
lot of
true.
people I tend to find are, what do I want to say? Podcast snobs. Um, they only want to be on the very big
I
shows.
know.
And I got news for you. You may find your business on the small shows. I remember when I was in the speaking business, I had a friend named Doug Vermeeren. And Doug was telling me that he spoke to a stadium of like 30,000 people, made his pitch. Then the next day spoke to a group of 30 people in a room, made his pitch, made way more money in that room of 30 than he did of 30,000,
Hmm.
because it was the right audience and very directed, and they were core to who was right for that business.
Yeah.
So you don't necessarily need the big audience, although that's great to have.
It
It does give you
depends.
more play, but don't shut down those
Yeah.
other shows, because there might be the buyer that you're just looking for.
And I like the idea with the radio shows that, like you said, some are like specific health and wellness. Like you said, the one that's law of attraction. So if there's a theme and you have loyal listeners to that internet radio show, like they're your prime audience. So you don't have to, it feels like you don't have to work as hard to like get in front of the right people because they already have a loyal listener base.
Well, and just like, things like Blog Talk and Voice America have channels.
Yeah,
This is the same thing with podcatchers, where you go and you find your category, and
right.
then you can mine that entire list
Yeah,
for opportunities. And just pick, let's say your specialty is women. So then you just go and you mine the women's category over there, and then you go on your podcatchers and go find the women's categories over there, and just focus on getting those particular kinds of shows in your list to pitch.
yeah. So how do you get on the internet radio shows? Do you have to be like vetted or apply, or can you just literally upload your just like a podcast?
It's just like a podcast. There's
Oh,
no
okay.
different. It's no different. It's just a difference of where you'll find it on the internet. That's pretty much all that's distinctive. Yeah.
I have to be honest, I've never really looked into it. Like I know they exist, but I've never really checked it out to be like, hey, is this a viable place for me to distribute my podcast? I don't know
Well,
why I've never looked at. I think I thought that the radio shows were sort of dead. I'm going to be honest, but clearly they're not. Clearly I'm
no, I
wrong.
mean, some of them have been going for 5, 10, 20
Yeah,
years and have huge listeners,
100%.
and have loyal followings. I know I've in my database, I probably got 40 shows that have continued over the years and
Yeah.
that are really solid on the internet radio side. One of my favorites is a guy named Johnny Tan over at Blog Talk, and he has a show called From My Mama's Kitchen. And from that, he does all kinds of subject matters.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
Johnny has been on forever. And he has a great following. So,
Yeah, yeah. I love
you
that.
know, it's fun. And, you don't want to discriminate about where your opportunities come from.
Yeah,
They come
yeah.
from all different places. And you should just, find the ones that are right for you and pitch them. And, some of them are going to say yes, some of them are going to say no. But it's a numbers game. The more you pitch, the more you're likely to get on. And you need to have a great pitch. That's really the key.
Yeah. Okay, so let's flip the other side of the mic then. So as a host, I can obviously distribute my podcast as I'm doing right now. I can do some searches for different radio shows that fit my niche and then upload my podcast there. But as someone that wants to guest on podcasts, you're saying you can pitch those internet radio shows, correct?
Yeah, just like you do a pod host
Yeah.
like yourself. And it requires one of two tools.
Okay.
One is a really compelling pitch letter that speaks to why you should be on the show. And it's structured like this. You have a opening lead paragraph that needs to attract attention. It's not, I would like to be on your show. It's all about, impact. What are you going to shock them? Are you going to ask a question? You're going to, explain something that you do that nobody else in the world does. You're going to maybe a little of your hero's journey. It might be topical. What's going on right now in the world and the problem that you solve. It could be, if it's radio, which is timely, you can do, something related to holidays and things like that. Podcasts live forever. So,
Yeah.
that's more timely. But you want to make a great lead paragraph that sucks them in. And then the next part of it is why you. What are your credentials? Do you have a book? Are you the expert you are? Why are you asking for this interview at this particular time? What makes you the person that you are that they want to put on the air? And you can even talk about, if you've been on major television or you've been on other big shows, not little ones, you can even mention that as part of your experience. And then the last part of it is a little bit more about what you're going to present. So you give it an overall paragraph description, and then you could use bullet points. Your listeners will learn, or your listeners will discover, or I'm going to present the following 10 tips, or whatever it is, you're going to give them a little bit of discussion about what they're going to hear. And then you basically ask for the order, you ask to be booked on their show and your information. Now that's a powerful pitch letter. That's the way we've written them for 400 people
Yeah.
at, when we do our podcast radio tours. The other kind of cool new tool is something called a podcast introductory sheet. And that's a one-page glossy with your bio and a couple of testimonial from podcast hosts that have had you on that are noteworthy. And then 4 to 5 topics that you speak on for the show. And then the host can pick one of them, or he can pick all 3, 4, and your contact information and all of that other kinds of stuff. And then you can either attach it with a pitch letter, or you can send it as on its own with a little cover note that says, hey, I'd like to speak on your show on such and such. Please catch my podcast introductory sheet attached. Let's chat, or whatever. So
Yeah.
the call to action. So those are the two tools that you can use to get yourself booked.
Perfect. Yeah, thanks for those tips. I know I get like there are horror stories with pitch emails. So yeah, doing it right is so crucial. Now,
Well,
you talked about podcast radio tours. Explain what you mean by that.
so what we do is something that nobody else does. I write a really compelling pitch list. If there's a book involved, I'll read the book. And then we literally send to 9,000 shows in one day.
Oh,
And the hosts that are interested that will respond back. And then we will start slating those interviews for the client. And we guarantee a minimum of 30 invitations. And so we log in all of the appropriate information, the name of the show, where it airs, contact information, whether it's a Zoom or phone call, the website, all of these other details. And we do it done for you. We done with you, that changes the pricing on it. But once it's out and gone, then my tour manager takes over and logs all that stuff in, and then the client basically establishes the dates that they're available. They tell us which ones they can do and what the alternative dates are. They take somebody's calendar links and schedules it, and then we lock it in. And then they're just now they have literally a tour. They never have to leave their desk, but they have a tour that basically will usually cover between 3 and 5 months.
oh, okay.
Yeah, it's not right this in the old days. A radio tour was you sit in a in a booth and you talk to 10 20 radio stations in a day. That
Yeah,
doesn't happen anymore. And so these days with the way that podcasts are done and everything, you can just fit it all in on your schedule. And because so much of it is flexible, it's not always live anymore. And then you can just build a calendar around it. And okay, this week I have 6 interviews. They're on this date, this date, this time. Put it in my calendar and show up.
that's awesome. And do you recommend ones that are like live, or do they usually release like within 6 months, or does it matter?
We don't really have a preference. We say we're agnostic when it comes to things like that or size or whatever. If you're
Yeah.
interested in this kind of material, you're on the list. And almost all is good unless you get somebody that's going to be a contentious host. And that, every now and then that happens, but most of the time it doesn't. So,
Yeah.
and we say yes to all of it unless you have a very limited time.
Yeah.
The best
True.
part about it is you can spread it out.
Yeah.
You don't have to do it all right away.
Yeah.
And so that gives you the opportunity, even if you're really busy, to fit most of them in. And the uh, the shows generally give you plenty of time to warm up, and many of them read your book if there's a book involved,
Mhm.
which is great. They really are knowledgeable. But let me also stipulate that a good guest provides a solid media kit to the host. And that solid media kit should have the following things: a main release about what the subject matter is. And when I'm doing it, I'm repurposing the pitch letter as the main release.
Right.
A full bio, because we believe that the host needs to know who you are, not three
Yes, I would agree.
paragraphs. And then an on-air introduction, which could be the 3 paragraphs. And then 20 questions you want to be asked in the order you want to be asked them.
Perfect.
Very important because,
Absolutely.
it used to be you could give people 5 questions when those interviews were 10-minute long, but these are hour long and you need to give people choice. But the questions serve another purpose. They are a roadmap for you, the client, to make sure that the audience is following where you want to take them.
Mm-hmm.
And since most hosts will use them, it allows you to stuff in the messages you want
Yes.
and make sure that you cover everything that you want to cover. and that you are familiar. You're not going to get a lot of surprises. Now, you might get bored doing the same things over and over again. But the point is, you're not going to get a lot of surprises. You might get some.
Yeah.
And you know that the interview is more or less under control,
So
under your
true.
control,
Mm-hmm.
because you know what's coming up.
Yeah.
You know what you want to deliver. And most hosts will accommodate you. And even if they don't hit all the questions, the last thing they're going to say to you is, any last words for our community? And then boom, you drop in whatever you didn't get in on
Yeah.
the questions. So when you give that, including a headshot, to the hosts, then you have eliminated all of their send me this, send me this, send me this, send me this. And they are well prepared, you
Yeah.
are well prepared, and it gives you a measure of control over what the content is going to be. Last thing, books. It used to be that when you are an author and you are promoting a book, up until a year ago, I would say that 80% of our hosts wanted a book, a physical book. But it really switched in the last year and a half.
Mm,
More and more people will take a digital book.
yeah.
So, but you still have to be prepared to send physical books to those hosts that want a physical book. Don't just, I don't
I
have
think so
one.
too.
It's
Yeah.
you either have to have some in the house to send, or you be able to send them out through Amazon, order them and send them to people. So you really cannot um, deny those people that want a book, because they will shut you down and you will lose the interview.
And I think it gives more wow factor. It shows that you're making the extra effort. And when they get the hard copy in their hands, it's just that more impressive. It's tangible. It can sit on your desk. They're more likely to read it, take a picture with it for social. It's like, I just think the power of giving someone that physical book is kind of gives you a leg up.
Well, and some of our clients have also started using this to promote their audiobooks as well. And you
Mm,
have to be able to give people an opportunity to listen to that audiobook. So you need to give them a page on which they can get to it, or a coupon code that allows them to go in and listen to it.
yeah.
But increasingly people like having it on, on Audible, or, in
Yeah.
ways they can actually listen to the book. And I have a client that we're launching right now, actually, and he sings and writes songs on the spot. And it's part of his professional
That's so
persona.
cool.
So he's embellished the audio version of book with all of that stuff.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it gives you more opportunity to express yourself for sure. I like though what you said, Jackie, about having more control over the podcast interview. I've seen, other people's interviews. I've been on some in the past where, you oh, here's the topic, but then they ask you such random questions and you're like, oh, I wasn't able to showcase my authority. I didn't get to talk about what I wanted to come across. Like, people aren't really going to understand what I'm doing. And it just feels like the interview is just so random, where, like you said, having that list of interview questions that you give the host, it's helping the host, but it's helping you control that interview so that you're positioning yourself the way you want to be positioned.
And I will also recommend that if you're doing a podcast, you have three things. If you're an author, you have the book that you're promoting.
Mhm.
You also have a free giveaway.
Yeah.
And then this is whether provided you're using the book as part of your business. And then you have the third thing you're promoting is what's next. And whether that's your e-course, your coaching program, your mastermind. Now keep in mind that these shows will, air anytime. So if you are sending them to a program that you do repetitively, send them to the page where they can find the dates,
Yeah.
rather than telling what the dates are,
Yeah, exactly.
because they'll be behind. But I really do believe that you have to have all three of those and so as to maximize your airtime. And most of those, and the questions can be triggered, in order to offer that
Yeah.
information.
100%. Yeah. Not a lot of many people talk about that, but yeah, that's perfect. How do you know if you're ready for a podcast radio tour?
Um, well, the first thing is, are you confident in your ability to deliver your message? And, you're not a very, very newbie. You've been out, you've been marketing yourself, you've been marketing your book to some degree. And the next thing is, what do you have that's new and unique and different? Because if it's the same old, it's not going to get you booked. You
Right.
have to really have something, a unique angle on your book, or if it's not a book, you have a unique program or unique way of doing business. Or I'm working with a dear friend of mine who is the food oracle. And
Oh,
she has an oracle deck and a number of other things, but she specializes in the spiritual fulfillment that food can bring you. But because every food in her oracle deck has a different spiritual value.
huh. I never
So
heard that.
yeah, it's really different. And she combines the intuitive and she has a food science degree and, and all this stuff. And she's created a very unique positioning for herself.
Yeah.
And so that's different and unique. She's not just an intuitive. She
Yeah.
does oracle readings and she does healing programs and she does retreats all around the vibrational value of foods. Now,
Interesting.
you look at that. It's
I
not even
know.
one
It's so
area
cool
you're
when you,
interested in.
yeah, when you hear something
So,
super unique.
so when you are going out to do a tour, you need to have a unique take on something.
Mhm.
And maybe it isn't, maybe even I talked to a guy the other day and he's doing a consciousness books. There's lots of consciousness books, but his story is unique.
Mm,
And so I'm going to back into the book by talking about how he got there.
right.
So you need to basically find what your unique selling proposition is.
Yeah.
And in some cases I can do that for you if you're coming to me to do it. But that, once you know that, and then you need to look at, what's the timetable when, if you're doing a book, when is the right time to do it? If you're not doing a book, all of your pieces ready to go, the websites, the free gift offers so that you can make sure that you capture the people on the shows. And those are some of the considerations.
Yeah. Absolutely. So when you have a book, I've heard mixed stories. Some people say you have to wait till the book is out before you start doing your podcast tours. Some people say you can do your podcast tours before the book comes out. Do you have a thought on that?
Yes, I do. Because so many people really still want to read a physical book.
Hmm.
I don't believe that you should start your pitching, not the tour necessarily, but the
Right.
pitching until you have a physical book. Now, that can be after you're published. It also can be galley or readers copies that Amazon does this. They're not quite finished with the book yet,
Okay.
but it's pretty much ready to go, and they can send special early copies. So as long as you have that in hand and have that available to you, you can start sending the pitches. Now, keep in mind that there's going to be about a month from the time that you send the pitches to when you're doing the majority of the interviews, because you want to
Yeah.
give people time to read your book. Now, some people say, send me the digital book tomorrow and I can be on my show Thursday. But the majority of them is going to need a little bit more time. And so you can actually start your pitching anywhere from 3 weeks to a month before you actually want to be doing those interviews.
Got it.
So let's say that your launch date is October 15, and you actually have books available to you. So you start sending on like September 15, so that when the launch date of the book is official, everything's open on Amazon, then people can come and take advantage of having you on their show, and people then can immediately go and get your book.
Right.
I'm not a big believer in, pre-ordering, using a media tour to pre-order. I really believe you should be selling your book by the time you're on the air.
Yeah, I know. That's an interesting way of thinking about it because I've had some people say, be guest on podcasts when you know what the framework of your book is to like create, or you have the cover, like create the buzz for the book ahead of time. But then you have a valid point that when people are hearing the podcast, you want them to go get a copy of your book.
Right. The only way that I would do the pre-order is if you got some close friends that'll have you on twice. Once way early and once when the book launches. You can take advantage of your friends that way.
Yeah.
If they're willing to do it. Just make sure they are.
Yeah.
And I also believe you can hit up a podcaster again, but give it a 6-month window.
Mm,
A lot of podcasters are happy to have you on a second time, but you just got to give them a
yeah,
6-month window.
that makes sense. So when you go on a like specific book tour, you've got a book and you obviously, want to get it out there. Is should you be on 10 podcasts, 20, or is there any rule of thumb?
As many as you can get on.
Yeah.
The point of writing a book is to deliver your message.
Yeah.
And or to attract a client base. If you're not marketing, your book will languish. It's the same as it was when you used to have books in your garage, and I still do, actually. I have those 2 beautiful books that I did was before print on demand, and I still intend to market them. But it's like, they're going to sit in your garage. They'll sit on internet and nobody will read it. Nobody
Yeah.
will pay attention to it. You need to be out there delivering it. Now, will your podcast pay for the cost if you've done, some kind of hybrid or self-publishing? Probably not in the initial phases. That's why, especially if you're marketing something more, you'll make your money off the back end.
Yeah.
And not off the book sales.
Yeah.
The book sales are one, an ability to deliver messages and change lives. The second is an entree to the rest of your business. So whichever pathway you choose, it behooves you to get out to as many people as you possibly can.
Agreed.
So, and unless the show isn't a good match for you, don't say no.
Yeah. Agreed.
And target who you're pitching. Don't just send it to, a gazillion people that, wouldn't be interested, in just generic. You really need to hone in on the kinds of shows that you want to be on. Even if you build a list, make it in your genre.
Yeah. 100%. Yeah, you need to be targeted. You want to be in front of your ideal clients. It's not always a numbers thing, right? If I would rather be in front of 100 people that are totally needing my service versus 1,000 people where some of them might be interested.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah. So what do you think are some of the mistakes that entrepreneurs make when they're on a podcast radio tour?
They can either oversell and be inappropriately aggressive on the air. Most go the other direction. They undersell, they wander. They spend a lot of time on irrelevant information. They tell too much of their story. They don't get to the point fast enough. You only got a limited amount of time.
Yeah.
Get to the point and move on to the next question so that you can make sure you get all the things in you want to get in. And then not asking for the, sale, essentially, not saying, hey, you can get my book on Amazon, or, come to my website and, get my free gift, or, any of those kinds of things.
Yeah. Great advice. Yeah. I'm so glad we had this chat because I've never really thought about, my dogs, never really thought about radio tours. You've given great points. Oh, dogs. This is real life, people. I'm home by myself with the dogs. Yeah, so I so appreciate you coming on the show. How can people find out more about you, and how can they get your help to book them on shows?
Absolutely. Go to consciousmediarelations.com and you can check out our testimonials. We have 90 amazing testimonials. We've worked with people like Don Miguel Ruiz, Ariel Ford, James Twyman, Joe Vitale, Chris and Jan Apwett, Maureen St. Germain, Noah St. John, and Marie Diamond, among others, and over 400 clients in all kinds of different specialty areas. So you can peruse the website and then just reach out to me at Jackie@consciousmedia relations.com. And I am happy to help you look at whether this is a viable medium for you. Usually, if you got a good book, and I can find a way in.
Yeah.
So
Awesome. Well, yeah, you've been doing this for a long time. So you have such a wealth of knowledge, strategies. You've landed so many great gigs for people and
and
help
keep
them
in
spread
mind,
the word.
it's not just with books.
Yeah,
We'll help
absolutely.
people if they've got another good story that makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah. Perfect. Well, I so appreciate you being on the show. I think you've given some great tips, and I'm going to go now check out some radio shows. You've opened up my eyes. Yeah, I so appreciate you, Jackie. Thanks for coming on.
It was a joy to be here, Lindsay. Thank you for inviting me.
And we'll see you next week on the Leverage Your Podcast show.